Desert of the Damned, the haunting of the Skinwalker. In the heart of the desolate Arizona desert, a quiet and seemingly abandoned ghost town lay hidden beneath the relentless sun. The town's name had been long forgotten, and few dared to venture near its crumbling buildings and forsaken streets. Those who did were warned by the locals not to stay past sundown. One fateful evening, Sarah, a curious archaeologist with a passion for uncovering forgotten histories, arrived at the ghost town. Armed with her camera and notebook, she had traveled alone to investigate the secrets that lay within. The sun dipped below the horizon, and the once arid desert transformed into a shadowy wasteland. As Sarah wandered through the derelict buildings, she couldn't shake the eerie feeling that she was being watched. The wind whispered through the cracked windows, and the creaking floorboards seemed to echo with haunting laughter. It wasn't long before a shiver ran down her spine, and she felt an overwhelming sense of dread. Suddenly, a distant howl pierced the stillness of the night. Sarah froze, her heart pounding as she realized that the chilling sound wasn't that of a normal desert animal. It was a cry that belonged to the Navajo legend, a cry she had only heard whispered in hushed tones, the cry of a skinwalker. With a quickening pulse, she retreated into the shadows and tried to calm her racing heart. But then, from the depths of the darkness, a figure began to emerge. It was a creature like no other, its skin a patchwork of human and animal, its eyes glowing with an unnatural malevolence. Sarah's breath caught in her throat as the skinwalker approached. As it drew closer, it began to mimic the voices of her loved ones, calling to her in a distorted chorus of familiar voices. Tears welled in her eyes as her dead grandmother's voice rang out, whispering secrets known only to the family. The skinwalker was using her fears and her memories against her. Desperate to escape, Sarah stumbled through the decrepit buildings, but the skinwalker followed, its steps echoing in the darkness. She could feel its malevolent presence closing in on her. It spoke in the voices of her loved ones, taunting her with her deepest fears and regrets. It knew her darkest secrets. Sarah realized that she had to make a stand. She found a circle of salt in her backpack, a childhood trick her grandmother had taught her to ward off evil. She quickly poured the salt in a protective circle around herself, and the skinwalker hissed in frustration. For a moment, it seemed like the salt might protect her, but then the skinwalker started to change. Its once distorted patchwork appearance began to shift and take on a grotesque, twisted form. It extended long, gnarled limbs over the salt line, its eyes locked onto hers with a sinister hunger. Just as it was about to break through the protective circle, Sarah remembered one final piece of her grandmother's wisdom. The skinwalker was vulnerable to the ashes of a ceremonial fire. With trembling hands, she produced a small jar of ashes from her backpack and threw them at the creature. The skinwalker screeched in agony as the ashes touched its skin, its body disintegrating into a cloud of darkness. Breathing heavily and still shaking with fear, Sarah watched as the shadowy remnants of the skinwalker were carried away by the desert wind. She had survived, but the horrors she had witnessed would haunt her forever. As dawn broke over the ghost town, Sarah knew that the legend of the skinwalker was no mere myth. It was a malevolent force that lurked in the desolate corners of the world, waiting for unsuspecting souls to cross its path. And she had a newfound respect for the warnings of the locals, for in the darkness of that forsaken place, she had encountered true terror, the nightmare of the skinwalker.
Subscribe Shadowy Shivers for more horror stories and contents.